So this is how it ends and how it begins. This is the Along the Watchtower podcast. Today is Wednesday, January 6th, 2021. Yeah, a lot of things have transpired in the last few hours here. I'm just going to adjust this. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, Lord. So I have a bunch of news feeds up. Landslide. And sorry about that. And so, where was I? Oh, yes. So a lot of things have happened. Usually, I do have an itinerary. I do have like list things and blah, 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 and I do tech first and all that. But in light of what has happened here, chances are at the very least half of tonight's broadcast will be about what's going on as far as the certification of the electoral votes. To begin, unfortunately, a woman has died. I think this is still, a woman has died. That shouldn't be where it began. That's where it began. Okay, so a woman has died. So what are you talking about? So a woman was shot by the Secret Service. Let's begin at the beginning. When we have seen groups call for revolution and violence, and why I so often talk about violence, politically speaking, the optics of it not being helpful, this is why. So let's begin, right? So they are, Pence calls as the vice president, right? He's supposed to certify the votes in a dual house, both houses meet, they go to certify the electoral votes, and if there's an objection, which there was for Arizona, then both houses separate and they deliberate for 2 hours. And it was at this time that the protests for I believe it's called a March for Trump, I think it was called March for Trump, the rally, ended up breaking into the Capitol building proper and basically storming the Capitol building. Now, here's the thing. I understand, a lot of people out there that I'm friends with on Facebook, and perhaps some of you who I don't know who are listening or watching are like, well, it'd be one thing if it was like BLM or Antifa, and so yada, yada, yada. And that is understandable from, your point of view. Obviously, that's how you feel. My point here, though, overall, is the sufficient method to incite political change. Because what's happening now, and I'll get to the results, but what ended up happening is that, firstly, and when they stormed the Capitol building, they interrupted, because this is a March for Trump. This is a march, it's Stop the Steal and March for Trump. When they stormed the Capitol building, they interrupted the objection that they would be supporting if they knew what the fuck they were doing. Let me stop. The objection, or the beginning of the series of objections that Republican lawmakers, all Republican lawmakers, I believe, were signed up to begin objecting to, they then impeded upon. So first off, the part of the process that would have helped them, they stopped. So they storm the Capitol building. They interrupt the process they would have supported. That would have helped their cause, and everybody scrambles. The halls of Congress, not the halls, but the actual congressional halls that they conduct votes in, is locked down. They grab these masks and go bags. They're told to grab, I forgot what they're called, but they're masks that were probably were put into the halls under the seats, probably post 9/11. And it's, like a radiological, biological, it's like a hazmat mask, radiological, biological, nuclear mask, And they're told to grab go bags, which have like emergency, medical equipment and stuff. They're ready for shit. They're ready for shit. They're ready for this. ABC News. ABC News. You'll see later. ABC News. Already had readied the National Guard for this, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute too. So, and don't get it twisted. The whole thing about this is now you get to see what happens when it's actually done. Because and I don't mean this condescendingly, but usually from the left, as we've seen, you see sporadic violence, you see, internal violence, you see in-group violence, right? But you don't necessarily see concerted efforts. You don't see like tactical movements. And this was kind of sloppy, to say the least, but effective enough to cross. They had like 4 levels, I don't want to say levels, but 4, levels of 4 lines of barriers, or 4 barrier type lines, removing them from the Capitol building, which they were able to get through, and then inside, and then some. There are pictures of this guy in Pelosi's seat and stuff. So there were some benign things that took place, but the critical point came, and there's pictures all over video. It's pretty graphic, where a woman. Well, protesters tried to storm one of the rooms in which representatives were being held and barricaded and protected by Secret Service. And a woman was shot, a female protester was shot in the neck. And there's, allegedly, there's a guy, we'll see in a little bit here, eyewitness testimony. He was talking about this. At the time, she wasn't reported dead. Recently, she just in the last half hour or so, she was reported dead. We don't know her name yet or anything, any information. It's very unfortunate because, on top of her, giving her life for this in this way, it is not only is it not worth it. I mean, okay, here's the thing. Far be it from me to deter someone from from what they feel like they are giving their life for. I'm sure she actually felt like she was not that she knew what she was getting into, but I mean, storming a federal building is one thing. Storming the Capitol building is one thing. Storming the Capitol building during a transition of power process is a totally other thing in and of itself. And doing all of that during this time with this president is just like the apex of bizarre. I don't know what to, because you don't want to be condescending. You don't want to remove yourself from the empathy of the situation. Not only is this woman dead, but she actually thought in the action she was taking that it was worthwhile to put her life at risk. Right? For Trump. Right? But then we get to the level of the political efficacy, of which there is none, because now the violence has led, obviously, to that the everyone being on lockdown. DC now has a curfew. 6 p.m. has been implemented till 6 a.m. They're shoving everybody off. So now, the National Guard has been mobilized. Great. So now you got 1,100 federal troops, federal, I don't want to say federal officers. You have 1,100 troops, National Guard troops in there, boots on the ground. So more jackbooted, heavy-handed activity is to go down. Who knows how long this lockdown will ensue, because who knows what else is in store from what obviously is an organized effort that I can say, because I always try to refrain from being hyperbolic, but I can understand why people are saying that this is like a coup attempt. It's not really like a coup attempt. This is pretty much what a coup. See, here's the thing. If this were a populist movement, right, you wouldn't see pretty much. Well, okay, the demonization from the media is one thing. You pretty much see the zealots now rising as if they hadn't already to the top of all of this, right? Enrique Tarrio stepped foot in D.C. and was immediately arrested. He had magazines. I'm presuming, I don't know if they were loaded magazines. I don't think he had actual rounds in the magazines, but he had 2 high-capacity magazines with him. And he was charged with a misdemeanor, and now he can't step foot in D.C. at all. But it's like, all of the apex zealots have risen, and they now have come and literally like a call to arms has been sent out, and they've come to the fray. And with this level of effort, this concerted effort, obviously this is pretty well organized, or presumably pretty well organized, because there's tens of thousands. But I didn't see those types of numbers. But I mean, if they're in and out and throughout all of DC, who knows? I don't want to talk about this sort of hyperbolic, sort of whatnots that's been coming out of the news. So the woman died, and the National Guard's been mobilized. So now you got 1,100 troops on the ground, boots on the ground. Who knows how long we're going to be there? How long this state of emergency is going to be? Is going to be around. Next, you then have the recanting, right? One of the representatives whose name escapes me, a female representative, has now recanted her objection to Arizona. I'm not sure what state she was going to object to, or if she was going to object to them all, because there was more than one. And she said that now she's saying that she removed her objection because it would disenfranchise voters. It's like, all right, I hear you, but it's interesting why you didn't do that in the first place. Fine, all right. We can argue the pressures of this event has motivated her. Some would say coerced, but it is what it is. Because the fact of the matter is that it's a constitutionally integrated process. She's welcome to, I believe she can put her name back on for the objection if she wants to, or she can remain abstaining from it. That's her choice. If she chooses to succumb to the event, then that's her choice. All I ask is that you follow the letter of the law, of which this whole thing has not done. And that's all everyone has seen of it. Regardless of what gripe they may have, any legitimacy from it is gone now. It's done. Ain't nobody trying to talk to you now. Definitely not now. They definitely didn't want to talk to you before. Definitely don't want to talk to you now. All right. So, woman got shot in the neck. Find out later she's dead. National Guard's been mobilized. One of the representatives going to object is now abstaining from doing so. And now the tip of the cake is that Democratic lawmakers are mainly Democratic. I imagine they're all Democratic, but lawmakers will say are calling for Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment under the idea that not only did Trump incite this with his rhetoric or lack thereof, perhaps we'll say to be conservative, not necessarily incite it, but he didn't curtail it at all. He didn't really do anything to stop it from happening. He didn't call for sensibility, right? I mean, he did, okay, and I forgot after this, he did come out and say, "Oh, everybody should go home." He literally said like, "Oh, they stole something precious from us, but everybody should go home. We shouldn't have violence." So, okay. And so that's now they're calling for the 25th Amendment. So all of that has happened, and now they're supposed to meet at 8:00. It's now 7:19, and so I was debating whether to wait until after or to come on now, but I decided to come on now. Do the business. I might do another little update afterward. I don't know. We'll see. But so far, this has done the exact opposite of whatever political efficacy or movement that they would have wanted to happen. And like that's what I encourage those of the left to see. This is what happens. Do you see? Let's remove their reasoning. Let's remove why or who they're doing it for or why they're doing it. This is the result of violence, outward and overt violence against the federal government at a time of transitional power. It is seen as a coup attempt. It is seen as terrorism. Don't do it. Don't do this. Refrain from this at all costs, because people will see you as monstrous. Okay, that really, like, and that's, I think, for me, ultimately what I've taken from this, because a lot of my friends on the left, I hate using terms left and the right, but it is what it is. Those liberal, more liberally minded, they talk in this sort of like violent revolutionary sort of rhetoric, and I always like caution them, like, no, what you're fighting for, what you're interested in, what you support are populist policies and ideas. Everyone wants these things. Everyone wants Medicare for all. Everyone wants drug legalization, the removal of nonviolent first-time drug offenders from their record, want them freed. Everybody wants prison and bail reform. Everybody wants cheaper drugs. Everybody wants, our troops to come home. Everybody wants police reform. Everyone wants these things. You don't need the violence. Just keep going. What you need, okay, is endurance, not violence. All right, this is madness. And I forgot that. How could I forget? Because I'm watching all the news feeds, watching my news feeds, and it just reminded. I forgot. So then also, the Democrats have got 50 seats, so it's 50-50 now, with Kamala Harris being the deciding vote. So on top of everything else, right? Just to add insult to their injury, they now have lost the majority in the Senate. So what is the situation there? All right. So the situation there, I mean, I'm myself and a lot of others, have been talking about it. I've been mentioning the sort of arrangements that I believe the Biden administration will position themselves towards in terms of China. Damn it, I forgot to bring up Didong Chang. I hope his name is Didong Chang. But yeah, it's Professor Didong Chang. You should just Google it. But, not Google it, YouTube it. But here's a prime example. So under the Trump administration, there was a so-called trade war with China. And one of the last sort of moves was to try and remove large Chinese telecommunications companies from the stock exchange, right? So the New York Stock Exchange, and we'll just get into it. I'll start with that. So the New York Stock Exchange, right? If you recall, yesterday, and I think the day before yesterday, I was like the New York. Oh, right. So Monday, I mentioned the New York Stock Exchange was going to delist 3 Chinese telecommunications companies, right? Then on Tuesday, I was supposed to read, I said I was going to read it to you today. Well, it's changed already, but Tuesday, they reversed their decision, right? And with an incoming administration, the New York Stock Exchange isn't under the sort of guidelines for activity that the Trump administration was putting pressure on them to do. So Tuesday they reversed it. They were like, no, we're not gonna delist them. And now today they said they will delist them again in another reverse. We're just gonna go through this. New York Stock Exchange will delist 3 big China telecoms, reversing decision once again. The stock exchange said its second reversal in 2 days came after new guidance from the Treasury Department. It said last week it would remove U.S. trade shares for China Telecom, China Mobile, and China Unicom from the big board, but reversed course on Monday. The New York Stock Exchange will, okay, I guess I had that reversed. They wouldn't, then they will, then they won't, now they will delist them. This is unbelievable. So they will delist these Chinese telecompanies after all, saying its second reversal came after new guidance from the Treasury Department. Its announcement came Thursday. So the New York Stock Exchange announced on Thursday it will remove traded shares of these companies I mentioned, China Telecom, Mobile, and Unicom, from the big board to comply with an executive order signed by Trump. The order sought to bar the American companies and individuals from investing in firms that the administration alleged aid the Chinese military. The exchange reversed that decision on Monday, causing much confusion. Secretary Stephen Mnuchin said that he disagreed with the reversal. And then the New York Stock Exchange said the latest reversal was due to new guidance from the Treasury Office of Foreign Assets Control that said people in the U.S. could not engage in certain transactions with the 3 companies as of next Monday. Trading of the 3 securities will be suspended at 4 p.m. on Monday, the exchange said. Shares of China Telecom were down 1.7%, while China Mobile was blah, blah, blah. Chinese officials criticized the decision, with a spokesperson for the China Securities Regulatory Commission saying Monday that the executive order entirely ignored the actual situations of relevant companies and the legitimate rights of the global investors and severely damaged market rule and order. Trump issued the order in November as part of a series of moves against Chinese companies. The reality of the matter is that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, consolidates everything. I mean, China is one of the most policed, like one of the most jackbooted nations on the planet, one of the most highly surveilled. They imprison political dissidents, the religious followers, whether it be Christian or Muslim. They harvest the organs of prisoners. Need that go on? Need that go on? It's China. Okay, corruption runs in and out and through, just like with Russia. This is the result of plutocratic, authoritarian, regimes. I'm sorry, I can't think of a communist country that isn't horrible. Communism's horrible. But I digress, because again, you can remove ideas from things. You can cherry pick and amalgamate ideas. There are concepts that are great in all things, I believe. I think something can be taken from everything, whether it be a lesson of what not to do or instruction on how to move forward wisely. Something can be taken from everything. So with that being said, I don't even know, because I'm all sorts of messed up now as far as where to begin. We'll go through. So the female here, woman shot inside the U.S. Capitol building as pro-Trump supporters try to break into House chamber. It is not known yet what exactly led to the... Really? You don't know what led to the shooting? All right. That's fine. I find that kind of odd. Oh, I see what's going on here. I'm just going to move this guy a little bit like that. Oh, yeah. There we go. All right. So, there we go. Let's read. A woman has been shot inside the U.S. Capitol building as pro-Trump supporters tried to break into the House chamber. That would be why she was shot. I'm just saying. I know what you're thinking. You're like, wow, this guy's having a lot of problems with his camera. For viewers, for listeners, you're just like, well, we just get on with it. CBS News confirmed that it is a woman who is in critical condition at a hospital from her injuries. Obviously, this is before she was shot. Before she was declared dead. So with that, oh shoot, I had an article up about her being dead, but yes, she unfortunately has passed. Let's see if we can bring it up here. Woman shot dead. Right. So an hour ago, a woman who was shot dead, reads New York Times. Oh, it's going to boot me out. Woman who was shot dead in the Capitol after it was overrun by a pro-Trump mob has died. The woman has not been identified, and information has not been released about who may have shot her. All right. Well, Chief Robert Conti of the Metro Police said earlier she was a civilian, and then his officers were leading the investigation. The woman was pronounced dead at the hospital. Said in an email, did not know who shot her. Video posted, right. I actually have that video. Well, I don't have, it's not like a close-up video. What it is, it's from afar, and it's probably from a gay congressperson, and, it's pointed down at the stairs, entryway to the voting hall. I forgot what they called it. You have a semicircle of Secret Service officers around a barricade. And it's just like bang, and it's really loud, and there's some chatter in the video, and etc. The woman in the video seemed to climb onto a small ledge next to a doorway inside the building immediately before a single loud bang is heard. The woman draped in a flag fell to the ground at the top of the stairwell. A man with a helmet and military-style rifle stood next to her after she fell, and shouts of police could be heard as a man in a suit approached the woman and crouched next to her. That is not the video I saw. Where she hit, people yelled as blood streamed around her mouth. We don't really need to continue reading more. Unfortunately, yes, she has passed. This was a video. This is Luke Radowski's Twitter here. Shout out, Luke. We are change. But this is a gentleman. He's just raised his hand. It's a young guy. He's got like a laceration on his right hand. And, we have it muted currently, but I've heard it. He's talking just about, what he saw. I guess we'll see if we can pick it up here. Said they stormed inside. There was a young lady that rushed in the window. And she was draped in a flag and she was shot. So that does corroborate with what we just read. But these are pictures. This is pictures from what I was just describing. So what you're seeing, for listeners, like I said, it's a semicircle of Secret Service agents with their guns drawn, and they're pointed at a closed doorway with a barricade up against it. And it's from that position that, the shooting ends up happening. But the video is a little bit further back, as is the camera shot. But, Trump tells rioters to go home while stoking election fury, says The Hill. Trump Wednesday urged his supporters who lay siege to the Capitol to go home in peace, hours after they forced their way into the building. In a 1-minute videotape released on social media, Trump urged his supporters to disperse, but he reiterated his false claims that his election defeat was fraudulent, which was the basis for the protests in the first place. Right. This is why they are considering invoking the 25th, because you can't. I mean, this is too much. This is too far. It's one of those things where you need to move the needle only so far before you've reached a critical level that no one can respond appropriately to other than incarceration. Like, as you move beyond communication and effective politicking, you get into these other ones: expatriation, incarceration, or elimination. Elimination always being last, but now they've reached the incarceration stage. Once these people are released, this is where you will have things like AOC's list. That's what I was supposed to read to you. AOC's list of pro-Trumpies, says the New York Post. We'll read that. But what ends up happening is you get blacklisted. You get excommunicated. You become a non-entity in society socially. How can you, this is what I mean. You have to live with these people. This is what I've been saying. You have to live with these people. Now, what do you think is going to happen, bro? You can't have a conversation with a guy that supports people who storm the Capitol building in the middle of an electoral process. Can you? Is that justifiable? I don't think so. I don't really think I don't think it really holds water. Right? And this is why it's good to support policies and principles and not people, political parties, or politicians, right? So my principle says this was wrong, and now someone's dead because of it, right? So, and it can, when you can stand on your own principles and stand on your own policies, it's that easy. This is wrong. This is wrong. Like, no, let me stop. Because, like, the whole thing about it is I never in all of my life thought I would see something like this, where all of the jibber jabber and all of the talk about revolution and about people really used to talk about, we need to storm the White House, kill thing, and this is what happens. And now the left, as it were, gets to exercise what they've always wanted, and that's ostracization. I'm a little dry mouthed, but they get to excommunicate you now, justifiably. You can't have a conversation. So let's read what AOC has in mind. The New York Post says AOC and company's loathsome plan to keep lists of pro-Trumpies. I mean, it kind of was a little. That will be the argument. It's like, really, you're going to support people? You're going to support someone who what do you want to say? How would it be free? Because it's like, do you want to support people who commit acts of treason? That will probably be how that will be pitched. And it wouldn't be too hyperbolic. Just from a spectator's initial reaction to it. How else are people supposed to react to something like this? What did you think? So it begins. In Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado, a man named Coco, appointed to the job of Lord High Executioner. What? God. Okay, let me read that again. In Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado, a man named Coco, appointed to the job of Lord High Executioner, tries to figure out whom he should have killed. There will be, he says, no difficulty in finding plenty of people whose loss will be a distinct gain to society at large. And then he reveals that he has a little list. A list of society offenders who never would be missed. Coco's exactly deplorables. This behavior is deplorable. How can anyone else say differently? You see now. You see? Coco's example is being followed exactly by a group of petty and loathsome enforcers of pious attitudinal orthodoxy who have appointed themselves to the collective post of Lord High Career Executioner in post-Trump America. I didn't realize this was an opinion piece. They literally talk about oh, here we go. Let's read about the Trump Accountability Project instead. And it's okay. So it's news from the New York Post is news. Trump administration blacklist pushed by ex-Obama spokesperson is panned. Well, at least it was panned. A former spokesman for Barack Obama's presidential campaign has been touting an apparent attempt to blacklist allies, as another ad pops up in my way. Let me see. Has been touting an attempt to blacklist allies and staffers of President Trump and his administration, drawing criticism as President-elect Joe Biden has called for unity and healing. Hari Sevagan, whatever. Also, the former National Press Secretary for the DNC and earlier this year, a deputy campaign manager in Pete Buttigieg's failed White House bid, on Friday tweeted a link to the Trump Accountability Project. Katie Collins of CNN just reported White House staff are starting to look for jobs. Employers considering them should know there are consequences for hiring anyone who helped Trump attack American values, wrote Sevagan to his more than 14,000 followers. Find out how at the Trump Accountability Project. The site features a shot of Trump and his staffers in the White House, overlaid with the message, "Remember what they did." We must never forget those who furthered the Trump agenda. We should welcome in our fellow Americans with whom we differ politically, but those who took a paycheck from the Trump administration should not profit from their efforts to tear our democracy apart. The site identifies as targets those who elected him, those who staffed his government, and those who funded him. The site does not make clear who is behind the effort. Of course not. His name is McCarthy, and he's been dead a long time. Despite a bitter White House race, Biden has extended his olive branch to more than 71 million people who voted for Trump, and encouraged his own supporters to do the same, pledging to be a president for all Americans. Oh, Joe Biden said something. He said he came out and said something about the assault on the Capitol building. What do you want to call it? I didn't bother. It's all rhetoric. But yeah, he said something. I don't know what he said. I just feel like just for posterity, I should at least point that out. He did come out and say something. He's not just sitting on his ass. An organized attempt by former Dem officials to blackball from employment anyone who worked for the U.S. government during the Trump administration seems the exact opposite of the calls for unity and healing we've heard from the president-elect. Adding in a second post, Jake Tapper, that those who would be affected comprise a pretty long list of Americans. The effort also drew fire from within the Democratic Party itself. I agree with Jake Tapper, said Ro Khanna. This is overboard and will not help us build a pluralistic democracy. I have worked with people like Matt Lira of the Trump administration and at the White House who built on Obama administration efforts to modernize federal agencies. It would be absurd to blackball public servants like him. Yes, it would. Also keep in mind, it says anyone who got him elected. I do believe those would be votes and or voters. But I digress. Okay, at least it was panned by Ro Khanna, but especially by representatives who you would not, not necessarily that you would not expect, but representatives who have been overtly and openly, against Trump. So there is that. Yeah, the National Guard has been activated. Well, this was activated, activated ahead of protests. But, yeah. They were activated beforehand, but now they're going to be utilized. The Pentagon has approved a request by the mayor to activate 340 members, but now I believe there's going to be 1,100. Because apparently there's thousands of people conducting this action. Yes, John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock has won. They've won, and now it's 50-50. And Kamala Harris breaking the tie. Excuse me. As I said on the top of the show, I very much think that you are going to... Well, okay. We now have a situation where they may not have a majority, but with Kamala Harris, hypothetically, being a tiebreaker. And it's not like... It won't be a situation where it'll be 50-50 and her breaking a tie with every bill that comes down the line. But with her potentially being the tiebreaker, you have a situation where, in consort with the White House, just off the top, perhaps they can get things done with less sort of abrasion than they usually would. That's the hope, right? But the reality is that Kamala Harris, okay. So Kamala Harris and the freedom story thing plagiarized by MLK, I get it. Okay, it's not the first time that any of these people have done it. You have Hillary Clinton and the hot sauce thing. Kamala Harris already made a fudge with she said that she used to smoke weed and listen to Tupac, and it's like in college, and she like already graduated college when Tupac come out with his first album. Whatever. This is the pandering that they do. Fine. But the thing for me, didn't bring up the article. The thing for me is her stint as Attorney General, or District Attorney, I'm sorry, for California, and her usage of penal labor, and her need, despite being told by the federal government otherwise, to reduce the prison population. There are a series of transgressions regarding her legal career that I have an issue with. On top of her pandering, but again, that's all Democrats. I mean, Joe Biden, you if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And it's like Charlemagne the God of all people. He's actually trying to ask you a question, but he's actually really good as a not I want to say political commentator, but as like a guerrilla like political journalist, like reporter. He asks like legitimate questions, and the answers he gets, although he accepts them, generally aren't really good answers or not even answers at all. But with that being said, this is again another prime opportunity to see what happens when Democrats have control. Now again, 50-50 is not necessarily control, even with a Democratic tiebreaker, Kamala Harris. However, it is a much higher likelihood of bills passing hypothetically than with a situation with, a Republican controlled Senate and a Democratic president. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting scenario that does afford them an opportunity. Do I think they will use it? No, because you still have each individual politician's stance. You still have their individual benefactors and who they're beholden to. And the reality of the matter is that Biden's position of austerity, of deficit hawkery, of whom he's filled his White House staff with people who are like-minded, right? We always have to keep in mind, this is the guy who's wanted to cut Social Security for the last 30 years. This is the guy who already has said he will not use executive order to write away $50,000 of student loan debt for everybody. This is already a gentleman who we've read with his position and power actually got the stimulus bill, the stimulus check for each individual reduced, okay, and lent credibility and support to the idea, the centrist concept of $600, which is what inevitably we ended up with, despite 2 attempts to give us $2,000, okay? So this is where we are, and they should be voting relatively soon. Let me just check the reel here. Oh my God, did they actually? Oh, okay, that's an ad. I thought they actually brought in Sarah Palin. Good creator, help us all. But it doesn't seem like anyone's voting yet. We have NBC, CBS, ABC News. All right, so no, they're not voting yet. All right. So yeah, I'll probably finish out the cast, and then perhaps there'll be an update. We shall see. We'll finish out with some COVID stuff. I don't care about the Kamala, because her stealing an anecdote, the freedom anecdote, FWE, freedom. She says as a kid, her mom left her and then went to go back to go find her. And she's like, what do you want, Kamala? What's wrong? And she's like, I want freedom. Well, apparently that was plagiarized from Martin Luther King. For our listeners here, we're looking at a tweet from a 1965 Playboy interview with MLK. This is a person tweeting. And it says, I will never forget a moment in Birmingham. This is MLK. When a white policeman accosted a little Negro girl, 7 or 8, who was walking in a demonstration with her mother. He said, what do you want? The policeman asked her gruffly, and the little girl looked straight in the eye and answered, Feedom, F-E-E-D-O-M. She couldn't even pronounce it, but she knew it was beautiful. Many times when I have been in sorely trying situations, the memory of that little one has come into my mind and has buoyed me. For some reason, I can't say that. buoy has buoyed me, right? Anyway, and so yes, of course, she's pandered, she's plagiarized. Again, Hillary Clinton hot sauce. If you want to vote for Joe, you ain't black. Whatever. So there's that. Buoy. It's a buoy. Buoyed me. Anyway, so COVID-19. We're going to end with COVID-19. Well, actually, let me start here. Louisville officers in relation to Breonna Taylor's case. This is the no-knock warrant case in which, there was a drug investigation. They got the ability to do this no-knock warrant on her house, even though it's her ex-boyfriend that she's had no relation with for some time. Boyfriend shot at the cops. Cops shot Breonna Taylor. And so obviously the key issue here is the validity of no-knock warrants. And it was found that the no-knock warrants were obtained with it was, I think, sloppily done, and obviously with erroneous information. Because they did end up catching the guy somewhere else, related somewhat elsewhere, and he even said she had nothing to do with me for some time. But we'll read USA Today. Louisville police officially fire 2 detectives for their role in the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor. Louisville Metro PD has officially fired 2 detectives and sanctioned others for their actions surrounding the raid that left Breonna Taylor 26 dead in her apartment. Detective Miles Cosgrove and Joshua Janes, who were fired Tuesday, are the latest detectives the department has terminated in connection with the shooting. A 3rd detective, Brett Hankinson, was fired in June for blindly firing 10 rounds into her apartment. Cosgrove, who the FBI concluded fired the shot that killed Taylor, violated procedures for use of force and failing to use a body camera during the March 13 search warrant. So, we know that he's at the very least conducted procedural misconduct. That procedural misconduct led to someone's death. How is that conduct not also negligent on a civil level? How can he not be prosecuted with on criminal charges? That doesn't make sense to me. You acknowledge that what he did, especially because there's multiple levels. Some want to get him on like murder 3. There's others who talk about manslaughter. There's others who talk about assault with a deadly weapon, and it's all are viable once you verify and fire the dude for procedural misconduct that resulted in someone's life being lost. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't. How the right? How? Man, it's I could break glass. I could do a lot of things. But it's not gonna. That doesn't. What is this? James, meanwhile, the USA continues. The officer who secured the search warrant for Taylor's apartment was found in violation of department policy for truthfulness in search warrant preparation. I was talking about the construction of the warrant itself, and this is what I mean. You would think that this would warrant a referendum on the process of obtaining a no-knock warrant and no-knock warrants themselves. That is this actionable change. Just firing dudes doesn't do shit. It was also announced Wednesday that Erica Shields, the former Atlanta police chief who stepped down after one of her officers fatally shot Rashard Brooks, will take over as leader of the Louisville's embattled police force. So you get and the revolving door continues. So you get the former police chief of someplace else that also oversaw failed results for a fatal police shooting to take over the police. None of this, and that's so what do you do? Well, you certainly don't storm the Capitol building. You don't storm the White House, right? Because now we can point to this, and say this doesn't work. It's not effective. It's ineffective. Now, will we see results from this administration as far as change in law enforcement? Doubtful. This is the guy that supported the Bill Clinton crime bill, and it's only when he began running for president that he started to, that every Democrat started to shy away from it. So that's that. Another Passover for justice and change, really, because now that they're fired, they will point to this and say we took action against these police officers and their conduct is not representative of our entire police department, especially since now we have a new police chief. So To conclude, Shields will face an immediate challenge, stepping into her new role following a record-breaking year of homicides in Louisville and months of turmoil and protests over the fatal police shooting of Taylor in March. We will wrap it up with some COVID news. Yay. COVID-19, beware of these vaccine scams, the FBI and DOJ warn. There's some Daily Voice. Scammers are using the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines in the U.S. to trick people into paying for doses for early access that never comes, feds are warning. As COVID-19 vaccines become more available, there has been a spike in scams seeking to exploit people's desire to protect themselves and their loved ones, according to the DOJ, as well as local police departments and other law enforcement agencies. This is in New York. Members of the public should be suspicious of unexpected or unsolicited contact from anyone unknown to them claiming to have information about a vaccine. Scammers will often use telemarketing calls, text messages, social media postings, and door-to-door visits to run their cons. Among the bogus offers reported to law enforcement include early access to the vaccines or entry onto a vaccine waiting list in exchange for money or information, such as a social security number and medical history. Scams. Here are some of the signs you may have encountered a vaccine scam. You are asked to pay out of pocket to get the vaccine. You are asked to put your name on a waiting list. Advertisements for vaccines through social media platforms, email, telephone calls, online. Marketeers offering to sell or ship doses of the vaccine for payment. Do not click on links from sources you don't know, obviously. And ignore online or phone offers for vaccinations. Actual healthcare providers will not ask you for money, and never send money or disclose your social security number. So basically, avoid Nigerian scams. All right. And, so, it doesn't amaze me at all. I mean, when the first stimulus went out, when the first stimulus went out, it was something like $14 million or $17 million was scammed out of it by Nigerian scammers. I mean, I'm not saying that as some sort of like stereotype or profiling of just they were Nigerian scammers. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But lastly, CDC updates COVID-19 vaccine guidelines after healthcare workers have allergic reactions. We talk about this every single day. Bruh. We talk about this every single day. One more time. We talk about this every single day. It's not even like I'm reading the same articles. Every day we get new reports of AEFI's adverse effects from immunization, okay, also known as anaphylactic reactions. Every day we read about new reactions. We just read the other day the FDA is now opening an investigation. So like you can't look at people who are like, well, I'm going to be cautious about taking the vaccine and call them anti-vaxxers and ostracize them. Okay. It's not like they stormed the Capitol. It's not like they destroyed vaccinations, right? Like that one guy in Wisconsin, I believe. Right. So, them having reservations is completely warranted. Okay. It's completely warranted. All right. You have everything from old people. Right, we read about some three elderly people, 2 in Israel, 1 in Sweden, but they had pre-existing health conditions. We're going to read now about what this, and I believe, right, that the CDC is updating their guidelines to suggest that if you're allergic to anything, if you've ever had an allergic reaction, to not take the vaccine. I could be wrong because I only skimmed through it because everything was happening. But we'll read it in a second. But, we have read about the reactions to the Moderna vaccine through people who get facial fillers, which apparently millions of people do every year. Okay, we haven't thankfully read about, because there's not any teenagers who are first line healthcare workers, right? So I was going to say we haven't heard about any teenagers, but then they haven't gotten it yet. Teens haven't gotten it yet. Elderly haven't gotten it yet. That's supposed to be the next step. Apparently, that's what Cuomo and de Blasio want to do, is get the elderly next. I don't mean to like say that nefariously. I'm just saying that that's what their plan is. I believe, and so every day we're reading about. When we read them in groups, it's never like 1 or 2. I mean, the least we read about was the one with the elderly just recently, and that was 3. But usually it's in groups. There are groups of people having reactions. And this is happening all over the country and the world now. So, to read here to conclude, CDC updates COVID-19 vaccine guidelines after healthcare workers have allergic reactions. Some people should use extra caution. CDC announcement comes after a few workers had allergic reactions to the vaccine. The reactions remain rare, right? But it's like 1 in 1 million for measles, 1 in 2 million for the oral polio vaccination. But experts said it's crucial that any serious symptoms be treated immediately. The guidelines now say that anyone who has previously suffered an immediate allergic reaction of any severity to any ingredient of Pfizer or Moderna's vaccine should not be vaccinated unless they have been cleared by doctors. One ingredient that is being carefully examined is called polyethylene glycol. It's a compound that's used to stabilize and transport bubble for the messenger RNA in the vaccines, which is critical for the function of the vaccine, I think, right? It has never been used in a vaccine before. This is what expedition looks like, does it? But it is an ingredient in many drugs. The CDC, perhaps it's the level of polyethylene glycol. The CDC said also anyone with an allergy to polysorbate should not get the shots. It's an ingredient used to stabilize some drugs, foods, and cosmetics. Polysorbate is not an ingredient in the vaccines, but people who are sensitive to it may also be sensitive to polyethylene glycol. Experts said with serious allergies to food or medications can get vaccinated, but they should be observed for 30 minutes afterward instead of just 15. They also need to get the shot in a facility that can immediately treat an allergic reaction. The CDC said anyone who suffers a severe allergic reaction to the first dose should not receive a second. Yeah, I think so. So, there we have it. We're waiting now on the vote, and it's about to be 8 o'clock. I'm going to edit this bad boy and put it up. But, yeah, those who are weary of the vaccine definitely have reason to be. And what we're going to see now is come spring, because this is going to keep happening. We're going to see more reactions. I don't see why we shouldn't. Hopefully, they determine in a more specific manner what is happening. But I mean, given the time frame, I feel like something like that would. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a virologist, as I continue to say. However, I am an interested party. I do have an elderly mother in a home, and I am concerned about her having the shot. But I'm more concerned about her getting COVID because she does have pre-existing conditions. So, this is life. We try and weigh the options with the information we have and make the best choice possible for ourselves and those around us. But we continue into the ether ever forward, and we keep trying to make change in the most constructive way possible. Because this storming the Capitol building, you thought that you were being treated unjustly and there was an unfair election and there was all these illegalities happening. We're gonna see when they vote, but we've already seen one representative recant her objection. We'll see if what I'm saying is right. We'll see because we'll see. We shall see. I try not to be hyperbolic in my speculations. I try to reserve judgment, let things unfold as they do, and just be honest in my engagement, With that being said, please like, share, and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. And be well to yourself, please, and be well to each other. All right, take care.